Hi, I'm Miguel Neves, the editor-in-chief of Skift partner site EventMB. We've launched a new podcast focused on the event industry, and we wanted to share it with you. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Event Manager Podcast, or just click on the link in this episode's description. If you like it, please subscribe and rate it, of course. Thank you very much for listening. Hello, my name is Miguel Neves, and I'm the editor-in-chief of EventMB. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Event Manager Podcast. Our guest this week is none other than the founder of EventMB, the one and only Julius Solaris, who is now head of engagement at Swapcard. I'm joined by the deputy editor of EventMB, Dylan Monarchio, and we talked to Julius in a fascinating conversation about things like the ultimate goal of providing value to event professionals by sharing research and valuable content, the choices and pitfalls of being a brand on social media, and whether we should build in public. We talk about the future market size for virtual events, and we compare it to the in-person event market size now and going forward into the future. We talk about how destinations may be seeing event technology companies as competitors and rivals. We talk about how event strategies are changing and merging into digital strategies. We talk about setting long-term objectives for businesses and how that's just not an option at the moment. And we leave you with plenty of takeaways, some of which are just about staying afloat as a business in the events industry. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you subscribe to the Event Manager Podcast and come back for more and more. So welcome, Julius. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure, and it's a little surreal being the new editor-in-chief of EventMB. And Dylan, thank you for joining me today as well. Julius, just amazing to have you as our first guest for the Event Manager Podcast. And for anybody who doesn't know who you are, maybe you could do a short introduction. And I think Dylan had some curiosity about how EventMB started. So I wondered if you could kind of tell us a little bit about the story of EventMB. And did you really start from your bedroom in Puglia? And how did it all happen? How did it all unfold?
Oh my God, just when you thought you got rid of me, here I'm back with a vengeance. Very excited.
Speaking of surreal, it's really weird interviewing my old boss with my new boss.
Poor Dylan. Is this a test on Dylan? No, very excited to be here. Such an honor to be part of our new podcast. Great idea. Can't wait to see it making waves in the internet. I've been the founder and editor of EventMB for a while until a couple of months ago when I transitioned to the dark side, as they call it in event tech right now. I don't know, why did they call it the dark side? It's totally not, but I joined Swapcard now, event technology company, and Miguel took over EventMB with the rest of the team. So it's a happy ending for all, I guess, and very excited for both our next steps. And here, obviously, EventMB has been my project for a long time. I started it not necessarily from the bedroom. I mean, we did have an extra room, so it was fine. It was in the living room, hopefully, in a town in Puglia, for sure.
But you were in Italy when it all started. You were living in Italy.
I was just back from Australia. Yeah, I just got back.
And then we met in London in 2008, right? So you'd already been running EventMB for a while. And how did you find the events industry? Because I think everybody's got a slightly different story of when they realize the events industry is an industry. How did you get into that? And then tell us the rest of the story, because it's fascinating.
Probably I realized there was an industry by 2012, 11 or something like that. So it took me a while to understand the dynamics of the event industry. This is why it makes me laugh. We're looking at all these virtual event tech companies, probably including mine as well, hiring people to work in events. It takes a while to understand this industry. If you're an outsider, it took me at least a solid 4 years. Back in the days, there wasn't a lot of information about it, to be honest. When I attended my first IMEX in Frankfurt, but before then I used to be involved with events in general. Is something that I loved. I loved being involved with people. I did my amateur things while I was in school, and stuff like that on the side. But out of university, my first role was marketing in a pharmaceutical conference, or promoting a conference in southern Italy, and all of that. It's just very minor gig. But, that was my experience back then. That's what I understood. But I guess as time evolved between 2007 and 2008, I was really fascinated and captivated by the emergence of technology and social media and how they would apply to events and how they potentially change events. That was my very strong interest, more than my direct experience with events, which was very limited. I really could see that there was a change coming somehow. Probably didn't happen the way I pictured it, but it was definitely the beginning of something in the industry, and people would care about it, which is very important. Like to the stage that they would read about it. That's very important as well.
And I remember that was the time when Twitter was also super big, right? I remember there was this one product that I loved. It's called Lanyard. I don't know if you remember that one, but it was like this online directory of anybody that was a speaker or involved in events, and it used their Twitter profile to build it up. And I loved it. I thought it was the future, and everybody was supposed to have a Twitter profile, and then it kind of collapsed.
No, it didn't. Eventbrite bought it and shut it down. That's what happened, which is the worst decision they could have ever made. It was the fantastic tool. It was really the way events should have evolved, especially event discovery, right? Because it was a very powerful way of putting together Eventbrite and LinkedIn and finding about where people are going at events near you, like in your networks. That was the discovery piece. They shut it down like massively. The guy that founded it from London had been with Eventbrite for many, many years after that. But nothing as I always keep on saying to Eventbrite people, like, why did you do that? It's such a great tool.
What is the answer you got? I'm curious. Like, why would you buy something just to shut it down?
Well, they incorporated it in the product somehow, not to the stage where it made a difference as an individual standalone brand, right? A lot of acquisitions go that way. But, not all acquisitions can be like Skift and EventMB, where everybody keeps their own identity.
Well, that actually, it's interesting because sorry, I think I'm
no, go ahead. I think this is the way the podcast goes. We go wherever the conversation goes. I want to make sure we capture a little bit more of the evolution, but your question, Dylan.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, this kind of speaks to the Julius brand, really. I mean, you spent 14 years analyzing event tech and unapologetically critiquing the trends and the job it was doing, and now you've joined Swapcard. So how have your views on event tech changed now that you're part of the quote unquote dark side? Do you feel like you have a deeper appreciation for what goes into these decisions and what goes into these products?
Yeah, I mean, it will always be a little bit self-pleasing to say, how am I doing now, right? I guess the response is in the audience. The response is when you pick up on a report as EventMB that we push out as Swapcard right now. Because, I've been extremely clear with my team, with my marketing team, and we've done 3 reports since I joined the company 2 months ago. And they've been about sharing data from the platform, which I think is what people need right now from event technology companies. Like, there's always been this incredible realm of data available within tech companies, but they never shared it, like, because they were scared of something or whatever. So that's been my commitment since day one. Like, how can I provide value without being cheesy and pitchy at all times? I mean, we know Swapcard is there. It's a brand. Like, I don't need to reinforce that at every possible opportunity and say, like, come and visit and wear like a buy it now kind of shirt wherever I go. So I'm trying to find that information within the company, relate it out there, and people value that, whether it's also an experience from our clients. We just closed a podcast which is published today with a group event director of Informa, talking about how they're doing a 30,000 events in 30,000 people event in August at the INM Convention Center. How they're planning a synchronous type of hybrid experience. That's incredible value to everybody listening. There's no pitching on the platform. If they want to say, oh yeah, and we love Swapcard, by the way, great, do it. I mean, but I'm not going to say, oh, this is the moment when we do this and this is the moment when we do that. So obviously for me, the natural evolution of joining a company, whatever company, even my next company, is going to be the same thing. It's going to be, providing value, because I have a contract with my followers online that needs to be refreshed every week, not every year. So it's not that I'm milking the cow that I started in 2007. I've been dedicated to that, and people trust me for that. So if I change that at some stage, trust me, like things are not going to go well for me. So I need to keep on finding ways to provide that value in different avenues.
Yeah, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about your personal brand, because I'm a big believer, and I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I think I never do things to be considered an influencer. I actually hate those posts that go around online, like, you're one of the 50 top people in the industry.
And what about the people that connect to on LinkedIn with you saying, congratulations for being on the 65 most influential people? What is that?
I hate that. For me, it's just it's a marketing play, right? You tag the 100 most influential people. They see your post. They go on your website. There's some sort of SEO benefit or marketing benefit, but I don't really think of it that way. And I think you're the same. And talk to me a little bit about how you see that personal brand growing, and how important it is for you to develop that like every day. Because I see you post regularly on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and you always challenge a little bit. You always push the boundaries a little bit and ask questions that are sometimes difficult, sometimes a little bit controversial. And I know it's obviously, there's a tactic there and you want to start a little controversy, but talk to me a little bit about your brand and how you developed that over the years. Like, was there a day you just woke up in 2007, decided I'm going to, be a brand in the event industry? Or did that sort of slowly develop and you realized that was what you wanted to be and how you wanted to be in the industry?
I love that question, how challenging it is, because I think the minute you start to think in terms of personal brand, you're out of the game of the real opportunity on social media and content creation in general. Like, whoever thinks like, and a lot of respect for those people for hustling and all of that, but the minute you start taking pictures with funny faces of you with some sort of a statement next to it, that's not a game I want to play. Like, that's not what I think about. Like, when I think about business events and the evolution of these, maybe there's some people that are going to enjoy like a TikTok video when I point at things that are appearing and like you get some value out of it. That's not my game. I'm just saying that I never thought in that way. And there's never, to be honest, Miguel, there's never a tactic about when I share things on Twitter. It's just my obsession with some things. And like, there's probably a disease more than a tactic there, a mental disease in terms of saying like, I'm obsessed with this thing to the stage that I need to pull it out. And obviously I always ask myself, is it going to be relevant or is it going to be like cheesy? Is it going to add value? Like, if, you see that as a tactic, great. I mean, but it is not intentional. It's never intentional to say, let's try to do this and see where it goes, right? It's never that. It's really opening up the conversation. For some stuff, it's just saying things that I think about out loud. The only tactic that I apply to that is like, once I write it, I reread it to make sure I don't get in trouble, because I've been in trouble quite a lot in the past for saying things out loud, right? So there's only some filtering that is applied to some things to make sure I don't offend anybody or, don't upset those that, at all costs want to go back to in person and say that virtual is just a fad, or those that are like virtual events and like crazy people and believe that in person is dead. Like, because, you have this polarizing sort of feature of social media right now where there's really different factions and there's people fighting with each other. So I try to keep doing my thing. So I'm doing my thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I couldn't care less. There's no objective behind it. There's no like, I'm gonna get more followers. I'm gonna, promote better, whatever piece is coming next with EventMB or Swapcard or whatever. It's just being driven by my curiosity for some things, or sort of being upset with something and having to say it out loud, because, complacency always made me angry.
And I think that's super important. Would you say it's similar to, I follow a few sort of startup people on Twitter, and one of the things that I've been noticing is this movement towards building in public. That idea that you ask for help on social media, you tell people what you're planning to do, and you invite people on the journey with you. And I find when I do stuff on social media, those kind of posts are much more interesting to people. Me giving advice on particular event advice or some kind of thing doesn't resonate a lot of time. But if I invite people, if I build in public to some sense, that resonates. Do you agree with that? Is that something you try to do? Or do you think that event professionals should do things like that?
Totally. I mean, I think you're a master in that sense, in like really getting the community together. I'm not nowhere is good or good at all in really collaborating with people. I tried in the past, but it doesn't work for me. I'm just like saying my opinion sometimes, and then that's what people expect from me. They don't expect me to come out and ask for help, or somehow that never worked. Like I've done it. So I see different roles in that. Like if I look up to, for example, Jason Lemkin running SaaS events and being extremely vocal about, like pulling whatever, 15, 20, 30 tweets a day on different aspects of, with very strong opinions on something, or that it's about like growing businesses and stuff like that. I tend to fit in that, but I see people like yourself, like Anne from Twine, like Nick Borelli, like all these people that are very community catalysts that really have a collaborative approach and transparent approach about building things. And I really love to see that, how it's changing also the way we market products in a collaborative fashion within different companies that on paper may compete with each other, but not necessarily, right? And I keep doing my part in that conversation. That my part sometimes is just sharing a statistic about something. So that's what people expect from me, and I keep on doing that. I share like, this is what we learned. It's breaking news to you. Get it, comment on it. Let's chat about it. That's what I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that what you mentioned earlier about sort of tech being in a position now where there are lots of people online, especially on Twitter, taking one opinion or the other, whether or not virtual is going to stay, whether or not hybrid is going to stay, whether or not hybrid is the future, to what extent people are willing to, go back to a pre-virtual event industry. And I think the pandemic has kind of presented us with a unique opportunity because everybody is forced to adopt the technology, where, many event tech companies had traditionally struggled with this adoption. So now that time is kind of running out as rollouts are happening with the vaccines and people are really eager to get back to normal, and given that a lot of planners do feel frustrated with it, do you feel like event tech platforms are kind of doing the job they need to do to convince stakeholders of the value of these platforms now while they have the chance? Or do you think that they're kind of, missing the opportunity that they have now with the near 100% adoption to do that?
I don't think we're at that stage yet. I think the inbound is still very, very strong for the virtual piece, because the situation is still quite unclear. So this is a problem that we're going to have, trust me, very soon in the industry. One way or another, we'll see a lot of companies struggling if they haven't completely nailed their positioning and where they're, what's the value that they're bringing to the place here. There's a lot of miracles that happened over the past year in terms of companies that were about to die, that got this influx of great product, but at the end of the day, they built maybe something out of it, but now they're competing with giants in that sense that got 10 times more, 50 times more, 100 times more than what they got. So if they were failing before, they're probably going to go back to failing afterwards, because especially if we're thinking about going back to in-person and hybrid, I'm waiting to see that, because the complexity of in-person is going to be extremely challenging for a lot of people that came to the industry as well in marketing or sales, have no understanding whatsoever of the dynamics of the event industry as such. So there's going to be virtual probably as its own category, right? That is going to have an adjusted demand, I believe, that where it's still going to be very sizable. We were talking about this as one of the potential scenarios in the joining the dark side of things chat that we had on Clubhouse a few days ago, where almost like virtual is becoming the category and in person is becoming a subset of that. Um, to the stage, well, in terms of money, at least, that's what's happening, right? Probably in terms of how we're passionate and sort of affection to in person, great, all of that. But money wise, the opportunity for me is right now is in virtual, right? That's where the money is right now. That's where people are investing the money. They're definitely not investing it in person. Yeah, they want to see hybrid as a subset of it, but as a smaller category of as a premium experience of the virtual interaction. It's almost like making a parallel between e-commerce and in-store experience. Like, obviously you got to buy an ice cream or a gelato since we're here and we're Italians a little bit. A gelato, you're gonna be you're gonna be buying it in person, right? But am I gonna buy toilet paper in person at all costs, right? No.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you say that because the other day I actually ordered like 2 liters of gelato from a place called Nanarella on Uber Eats. I bought that online because I didn't want to go get it. Right?
That may change very quick. Like, let's not assume that Barnes and Nobles is doing extremely well and there's a comeback to Barnes and Nobles when Amazon is like kicking, like growing 1,000,000%. Like even Amazon is not going to let you do that, Barnes and Nobles. That's what I'm trying to say. Like the pace these event tech companies are evolving at this time may well reshape the in-person in terms of capability of these people to take over what we used to know as the event industry before and reshaping it altogether, because that's the size of the deals that are happening. We've never seen those size deals, those deal size before.
I'm interested to know, you mentioned, oh, sorry.
I was just going to make an analogy. I mean, we saw, was it Hopin valued at 5.7 billion? We saw the Las Vegas Sands selling Las Vegas Sands for 6 billion, which is crazy to compare those two, right? That we're talking about the 4th biggest building in the world being sold for the same amount as a software company, right? But so just to make an analogy, we're hoping to go to IMEX America in November, if, hope everything works out. Are you expecting when you go to IMEX America, if the hall looks the same way as it used to have a much bigger technology section? Are you expecting to walk into more of a CES than an IMEX when you go to IMEX?
That's a question for Karina as well. That's a great question for Karina in terms of the bookings that they're getting right now. But for sure, like, well, tech was already kind of growing, right, steadily, not probably exponentially, but steadily in terms of show floor. They always kept on asking Achilles and every year, like, how's the tech floor going? I was, yeah, growing. So great. So some destinations probably will try to use that as a potential comeback. But I know the space is going to be profoundly different, right? From the IMEXs we've seen before, in the sense that, it's a new properties, Mandalay Bay, and they have extra space as well. So it's probably going to be tough to compare, but definitely I know there's going to be a lot of interest from tech companies to capture that audience in person and be present. So when Cvent used to be the bigger booth on the show floor that was almost detached from tech because they were too cool for school, back in the day, we're going to see a lot of those instances, I'm sure.
And would you expect maybe the tech companies to be on the destination stands as well? So sort of partnerships with the destinations for the hybrid event world, or you think they'll be separate?
No, I don't think so. Honestly, I don't. I think destinations wants tech to die as soon as possible. That's what they want. because they feel extremely threatened right now by what is happening. It's natural. It's part of the game. The business that has been taken away from tourism and all of the impact that events have on destinations is massive. There's an existential threat for the model of traveling to a place for an event of different size. There's still a place for it, right? But there's a lot of reconsideration of it. The amount of business that has been closed over Zoom calls. I'm not even talking about more complex event experiences, but even Zoom calls. Like, why were we going to fly 4 people to Aruba to meet when they can, just do it Zoom and move on and be more effective, right? And close deals anyway. So there's going to be space for those big events, right? There's going to be space for those staple events where, like, the IMEX is, those large CES, where there's a massive amount of people going in the same place. You got to be there. That's going to be the decider. You got to be there. But a lot of other events will be cut, if not for intention, for budget, because it's just there's not going to be any room for that expensive trip somewhere because it's nice and we got to do something different. Actually, no, the next 2 years are going to be about, let's stay afloat and keep business going. So virtual is better positioned than destinations, and destinations are not going to like that. And if they haven't partnered as yet with virtual companies, they're not going to start now.
To that point, though, I would imagine that most, if not all, of the virtual growth that's happened so far, which has been exponential, has happened online. And we're talking about virtual companies, like event tech companies, going to a physical event in order to use that to, bolster and or fill their pipelines. So I guess my next question is kind of like, what if so much business can be done effectively online without having to go in person, and as bigger audiences get more attributed to virtual event experiences, how do you see that kind of blurring with digital marketing strategies, and where do you see that going, and how do you see like the role of event planners kind of dissolving into marketing teams and vice versa as much of that activity is relegated to a virtual space?
I love, by the way, how deep this conversation is getting. Only from EventMB, we can geek out and space out onto very deep tech talks, other than like, is the future going to be hybrid? Yeah. No, I mean, there's obviously there's a venue component of that. We just announced yesterday a deal with Hyatt, right, using Swapcard for a lot of their venues, like as a additional tool. So there's definitely a commitment from venues more than destinations in bridging this gap. Now that's very interesting to me, because there's always been a gap that we've been complaining forever as EventMB on, the Wi-Fi and the tech infrastructure not being there, right? But these blurred environments in terms of venues and these mixed realities opportunities are going to be extremely exciting. I read your article about it, Miguel, your comment on Twitter about mixed reality. It's very exciting coming forward in terms of how you can blur the audiences. Here's the deal. Like, I'm going to decide whether to attend in person or virtually, right? There's nothing you can do about that. Like, I'm going to make decisions on whether I want to be in person or virtual, and you got to be ready for both, right? If I'm part of your potential audience, you got to be ready for it. Otherwise, tell me how you're going to make money with the projected 50% capacity. I mean, even if Vegas is going back to 100% on June 1st, are we going to get 100% capacity in business events? I don't think so. Not for a while. So how are you going to make a profit, like in an industry where margins have been traditionally low and operations has been a nightmare to deal with, and probably we turned a profit in 2020 after 10 years of struggling? That was the beginning of it. So how are you going to keep on doing that without a digital strategy, without capturing the digital marketing opportunity that virtual events have? And I want to be specific about it. That's the opportunities, the digital marketing opportunities, not, let's create experiences online. And now that we got rid finally of the experience buzzword, we're seeing a resurgence of that in the virtual environment, which is like really killing all of it. No, it's a digital marketing opportunity that there's a reach and volume opportunity. There's a subscription opportunity. There's a lot of stuff that you can do there to complement that missed revenue that you're going to face for the next 2-3 years, to be honest, because that's what we're discussing here, I believe.
What's the benefit for companies to invest in virtual events to fill out that digital marketing rather than doubling down on digital marketing and potentially generating more on-demand content and that kind of thing? That, you know, those are methods that are proven, right? Those are methods that are proven. They have data associated with them. There's a whole technological infrastructures around existing digital marketing, not to mention social media that people are already on, like almost ubiquitously. So what's the sell for a 365 virtual engagement platform, for example, when you already have all of this other digital marketing infrastructure?
So the trend there is definitely moving toward owning your audience and your conversation instead of giving it to Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Clubhouse or whatever, right? And I believe that's where the real opportunity is laying right now with these, like with an event that used to have 300 people and now has 3,000, right? What are you going to do with those 3,000? Are you going to give it back to Facebook as soon as you go back to in person because you can't be bothered? Or do you want to really milk that audience to make sure that you get everything out of them potentially? I'm exaggerating here on the marketing perspective, obviously. So if you think that way, you're never going to go anywhere. But, are you going to own that data? Are you going to own the opportunities to create more content? Since everybody's so dedicated on creating content out there, like, are you really going to do it strategically within your audience, within your community? So instead of doing a audio conversation on Clubhouse, you're just going to do it for your audience and really create more opportunities for engagement through the year other than just that one big event that you used to do. But you used to do webinars. We used to do white papers, all these events. They used to have all these strategies. I think it's just a matter of pulling it all together in one place. Still keep using social for external referral as much as possible and having those conversations and be part of it. But be really clear about your digital strategy because there's opportunity there. There's opportunity to do more things. The platforms have evolved substantially since like a year ago. Substantially. Like we're releasing 12 features a month, new stuff that you can do, right? So, and other companies, event technology companies, are doing the same, if not more. So there's a lot of evolution in how technology companies are serving these needs right now because that's the new category and they need to be building about more tools for it. So yeah, why miss
so
the opportunity?
Let me build on that in terms of some practical advice, maybe for anybody who's listening, event professionals. We want to get to what you're talking about. We want to get to being experts, or at least being able to action these things to make the most of the platforms and make the most of these strategies. How do we get there? What's your advice to people that want to get better at that and want to understand that ecosystem and be part of those cutting edge solutions?
Yeah, I will not start with the cliche of like knowing your objectives and working through SMART objectives and all of that crap. I think that it's important that you understand also the role of objectives these days. Setting objectives in stone for a year-long program. I mean, you gotta be beat me here, but you gotta be screwed, let's say, for lack of a better word, in 6 months' time, because things change so fast that if you're not reactive enough, like objectives may become obsolete very quickly. So I think it's like core needs. Is it networking? Is it content that you're thinking of? Is it entertainment, right? So I think that the media selection, media portfolio that you're going to choose, whether it's in person, hybrid, or virtual, is going to depend on what those objectives are. So if your objective number one, your audience right now wants to be entertained and they can't get enough, like they're tired with these Zoom calls, don't attach any digital framework to what you're trying to do. Just do an in-person thing. Get the mozzarella maker in front of them and freaking DJ and get everybody drunk and celebrate that way. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point of attaching a virtual digital component of a cost to something like that, because my primary need is to just have fun at this stage. But then in the lead up to that, if there's a need for content first, there's a strong digital adherence, sort of strong digital opportunities. So create the content in a smart way. If you've done all of the past year experience, if you've been working on virtual events over the past year and you don't have an idea of the data from those events, you wasted your time. You were trying to stay afloat. You missed the biggest opportunity here, which is finally understanding what works and what doesn't. Because honestly, in-person events always lacked a proper data framework. Like, as much as we like to say that we did have it, we didn't. Nobody looked at the data. Like, it was poorly collected. So, but everything is trackable in virtual. So what are you doing about it? What are you reviewing? Like, do you know the sessions that work best? Do you know the formats that work best? Do you know the breakouts that work best? Like, do you have an idea of all of that? So build 10x of that, like build on top of it. Invest more in that until things change, because they will change. Like, if you told me in February that Vegas would reopen 100% by June 1st, I would think you were crazy or something, right? But now all of a sudden it's moving so fast. So, literally, like, this is not a dodging the question and say it's all about the context, but like really invest as much as you can, as soon as you can, in what works, and then review every 3-4 months. That's the only way to stay afloat for now.
So I was going to ask if you had a clear vision of the future, but it sounds like the vision of the future changes every day.
Yeah. Well, you know this better than me, right? I'm sure you got.
Nobody has a crystal ball.
I remember the chats in the editorial chats for Skift and EventMB, and I'll like, oh, breaking news here and breaking news there, and like, oh, now we're doing this and now we're doing that. So I remember that conversation. I know it's nowhere. It's even worse right now in terms of things that are going in different directions because of like India being a humanitarian crisis, Europe may be getting out of it, getting the grasp of the vaccines. US, normal. Like, I'm leading a normal life right now in Las Vegas. Like, totally, like, I'm vaccinated. I'm going out, I'm traveling, I'm doing everything normally right now, 100%. Yeah, I'm wearing a mask in places for respect of other people and practicing social distancing as much as I can. But even that, they're taking it down in California, right? No social distancing at events going forward, right? So there's no mandatory way of doing that. So it's changing so fast. But that one thing I can tell your audience is going to be very, very important is what you need to focus on, what really matters. And what really matters is your business model. That's what you got to nail this year. Like, you've got to find a way to make money, to make revenue, not to host events for the sake of hosting them. Because like, if you manage to navigate through and stay afloat this year, then you're going to thrive 22 forward. That's for sure. So you got to nail that. What is it? Where are you making money? Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be multi-hub, hub and spoke type of model? Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be just virtual? Keep on doing that and stay afloat. Then when things resume, you're going to be in a very different market for sure.
That's awesome.
No, great takeaway.
Absolutely. Julius, I think we'd like to wrap up, but I'd like to ask you for some help in finding the next guest or next guests, if you want to give us some more names. But we'd love to get your advice on who we should invite to be on the podcast next. So
we interviewed her for our podcast this month. I would definitely recommend Haley Haggerty. She's a fellow podcaster as well. With podcasts, you go this gang things where you invite other podcasters on. So I love this idea as well of inviting. It's like Twitter in 2018 or right? 2008, right? You feel a little bit shout out to YouTube channels. Like, I don't know why that doesn't happen in content. Well, I know why, but I don't want to say it out loud. But with podcasters, I would definitely recommend to invite other podcasters, because there's a lot of people that are not getting the exposure that they need. So Haley Haggerty, group event director for Informa Markets, and she's the host of the In Case of an Event podcast. She's a great podcaster. I met her in person in Los Angeles as well. It was my first business meeting of since a year and a half. So yeah, no, I'll definitely recommend her.
Great.
Perfect. We'll definitely have to invite her. Juice, thank you so much for being our first guest. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope all the listeners got some insight and great insight and great advice, and always very direct and personal, which we appreciate. So really appreciate having you on the show.
What a pleasure to be with you guys. Best of luck for the podcast, okay? And congrats on what you're doing with EventMB, still leading the way and actually doing even better than what we've done. So congrats on that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager Podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.